The more and more that I did this technique, the more I realized that it was eventually going to go to something that was really big. The summer after the Scumbag Tourneys and before Bare Tea Cutting Tools saw a really cool idea emerge. It was called The Open Sky. The Open Sky was another story album idea, like Where Dead Men Go. The Open Sky still inspires me to this day. It's a really exciting idea. I can't disclose too much about it right now. But what I can say is that I want to try everything. I want to try every kind of shot with that. I want to move the camera in broad daylight. And I want to have hundreds of clones interacting with each other. Human pyramid, why not? And I understand that I can't work on that kind of film right now because I still have a lot to learn. When my thesis came around, I decided, alright, I'm going to make my thesis a preliminary test for The Open Sky. This documentary is actually my thesis, but it used to be a different film. But that film didn't get finished for many reasons, and I'll explain that soon. The movie was called A Shadow in the Dark. A Shadow in the Dark was honestly a last-minute idea. I was freaking out the last day of junior year. My brother and my dad are already on campus, and I am in this room again, Walker Auditorium, with all the lights out, except for the one above the piano over there. And I was just trying to come up with a movie idea. I was just drawing blanks. And I came up with one finally that utilized the advantage of darkness because I realized how much of a sandbox canvas that was. I thought that might be perfect for testing a lot of things that I want to get ready for. The movie itself underwent 2 complete revisions. The first one was a very innocent story about a man living on a mountain that has no sun, no stars, no sky. And he goes to the city to find a traveling circus group, and he hires them, brings them out into the mountains, and they make a festival of lights in the mountains. It was a cute idea, pretty nice. I realized it would be so challenging to get all those people to shoot this at night, so I didn't go with that. I revised it to this like Twilight Zone kind of thing, where the main character is after this arsonist. Again, there's no sky on this mountain. This arsonist burning a bunch of trees. Arsonist must clearly be the bad guy. As it turns out, the arsonist is actually like a truth seeker, and he understands secrets about the universe that nobody else can comprehend. Every tree in the movie was actually a star somehow, and if you look up there where there's no sky, and where all the stars should be, those stars are actually trees. And they are in a stellar nursery, and they don't realize it. And if you cut down a tree, you get a supernova. So I scrapped that idea. It was like a bad stench. I couldn't even follow it. Same thing, no sky, and the main character is a private eye and a bounty hunter. And he's trying to stop the latest new threat, which is an arsonist. And that's it. He has to follow the arsonist and try to outwit him. I was going to play all 21 characters. How fun is that? Themes were inspired by an original manga script, comic script that I had written for an honors module the semester before. It was an idea I had called a motivating factor. It deals with themes of inspiration and improvement. Inspiration is a double-way street. It can be good and it can be bad. That movie was supposed to illustrate that. Same thing with the comic script that I wrote. The other thing is, sometimes the best advice that you can give somebody is to just simply get good at something. Sometimes that's all you need to do, is just get good at something. Those were the 2 overall themes of the story ideas. I picked nighttime because it's the sandbox area. It's like black on black canvas. And I got that inspiration from when I did the Bohemian Rhapsody parody in the Scumbag Tourneys video. The advantages of darkness are that you can hide the stitching technique. And because you can do that, you can also move things around in the dark and make it look believable. A lot of optical illusions are also possible at night. I had this class this semester before. It was Intro to Creative Writing with Professor Sarah Howe. She was awesome. Really cool teacher. She had us make a poetry book. So I went all out with the artwork because I love doing that. And I employed this technique because I knew that I should be practicing with this nighttime stuff if I'm going to get really into it with the lantern. So I cloned the lantern, and there were 77 lanterns in the picture, even though in the front cover art of the poetry book, even though I only had one lantern. I cloned it 76 times, so there were 77 lanterns, so much light. It was like the night sky. It was awesome. That was my first experience with cloning light, which was a big factor. I realized a lot of difficulties that were going to come into play. The light that lanterns gave off was just as much a character as the actual characters, like the actual me's, because light moves around just as much as I do. I had some areas where the light of one lantern meets up with the light of another. There should be some overlap. How do you make that seamless? In a photo, you can make it seamless, but in video, that's very challenging. Light's going this way and this way, and then in the middle, it's just suddenly not reflecting. It's weird, but I knew that this was going to be a problem. So instead of cloning light, I figured I was just going to buy a bunch of lanterns, so I did. I bought 5 lanterns. So, plus the one I had from Verity Cutting Tools, now I had 6. One of them was specifically more broken than the rest. Camp. But Camp was good. Camp is still a good lantern. I just had to remember, it's slightly broken switch. Alright, sure thing. I actually named all 6 of them after the main characters in A Shadow in the Dark. So, you have Erebus, Philo, Crawford, Camp, Alva, and Eldridge. So, yeah. You got drinks, right? I'm so tired. I've been shooting for 8.5 hours tonight. I'm so tired. I treated this movie like an actual movie. It had an actual budget of $1,000. We spent over $1,000 on this movie. Especially for a college kid like me, that was hard. That was a brave thing to do. Too very dicey. We did have free equipment, which was cool. The Blackmagic Cinema 4K camera that this documentary is being shot with right now. The tripod that I bought, this is a new tripod. We had a DIY Steadicam. I made a Steadicam in my garage with my dad, so that was a lot of fun. Cost like $15, and we used that. Or we planned to use it, and actually never did, but we used it for other projects. We also had access to a glide track, which is really nice, as well as a boom mic and pole, and a softbox light kit with 2 lights and 2 stands. And a generator, but I'll get into the generator in a bit. Here's the budget, right? The lanterns and batteries alone cost over $100. They're all Rayovac brand, they're good stuff. But again, one of them was slightly broken, and 2 of them never left the box, and they're still in the box. 4 was fine. Wardrobe and other props cost, I have my notes over here, so wardrobes and props cost $225.39. A few hats, but really just a lot of shirts. We got everything from Savers, Walmart, and AliExpress.com. And some designer jackets in there from China. Lanterns and batteries are costing over $100. Wardrobe and props are costing over $200. Rentals are coming close to $100. And at one point, it was supposed to be over $300, but it never did. We were going to rent a Sigma 35mm lens with f-stop of 1.4. That would have been really cool, and it would have brought in a lot of light. I had to think about it for a while. I realized I didn't want to bring in too much light because I did want to have the advantage of darkness. That was the whole point of this. So instead, we just settled for this lens, which is a fantastic lens. You'll see in a movie, it was just fine. We did rent a Switronix PowerBase 70 battery pack for the camera. It was like about $90 for 2 weeks. And that worked just fine. It stopped charging at the end, though, because not only would the normal battery on the camera not last for as long as we needed it to last out in the cold at night for hours, but also somebody lost the actual battery for this camera, and the one that we have now, can only last for like 5 to 15 minutes, which sucks. My honors thesis mentor was actually nice enough to lend me his generator that he's had for 20 years. PowerMate Vantage 3500 generator. And wonderful piece of machinery. And now it's going to be used for powering the lights that we would have used in the movie at some point. Photo storyboard was remarkable. I'm actually going to pull it up right now. The photo storyboard took me 7 nights and 3 days. So in essentially 10 days, over 24 hours of work, maybe over 48 hours of work, actually. It was a lot. Photo storyboard was crazy. So I was really into this new thing that I was finding out called transmedia storytelling that my professor, Sarah Howe, had found for me the semester before. Basically, what transmedia storytelling is combining of other forms of media to take the place or make a hybrid form of the current form of media. So like take a script, for example, a script for film. Instead of writing a script, you could maybe make a comic book with panels, and that serves as a script. It's transmedia storytelling. Well, I took that concept to heart and thought, you know what? I'm going to make a photo storyboard instead of drawing each one. I'm actually going to go out there and take pictures of all the angles that I need. And similarly to the Yo Escape music video that had the 16-page photo story guide, this is going to be a storyboard that shows instruction-wise how to make a shadow in the dark. And I actually liked that idea, so I went with it. It was cold. It was cold each night. I would go out with like 4 lanterns in my grip, and a bunch of heavy things over here, some occasional props. I'm built. I got like all this clothes and different wares because I know it's going to get cold. I shot 7 scenes one night, 1 scene another night, I think. It was pretty crazy, and I just go into the woods and take pictures of myself doing weird things, and it was dirty out there. And I'd come back. Some people saw me on the way to the woods or back, and they didn't say anything. No, it's just like, I don't know what he's doing. It was actually really fun because it was just so different. Stop for a moment and realize I'm going out into the woods late at night, right next to campus. There are no animals there. There are no people there. It's just nice and quiet. Nothing's going on. The moon would sometimes come out. Sometimes it'd be covered by clouds, but you could still see it. And when it does come out, like fully, it lights everything up. You can see everything in the woods, and it's really something. You can see the stars. When the moon is not there, if it's a new moon, things get really dark. But then you become amazed by how much your eyes adjust to the woods out there at that time. And eventually you do end up seeing everything again. And I had a great time shooting. It was just very weird and different, and that's why I liked it. It was a very unique experience, and I'm happy I did all those weird things out there. David Smolenski helped me out with the 5th and 6th nights. Robert Dixon helped me out again for the 6th night. Sometime between the 4th and 5th nights, a bulldozer had come through there and wrecked the place. The dirt was everywhere. There were mud pits everywhere, sticks and branches everywhere. My shoe came off at one point, got stuck in the mud. It was just way dirtier now, and everything was down. There was a tree that I had used to hang up a flashlight, and that tree was taken down. I couldn't believe. I was like, what are they doing? I had 2 more nights of shooting what to do in there, and I was like, don't do anything more. We got everything that we needed, though, and it was good. The 7th night was shot in my brother's room. It was the only 2 scenes that were indoor shots. I used his TV. He didn't mind too much. Photo storyboard, when I finally finished it after like 48 non-consecutive hours, it was beautiful. It was an absolute roadmap to how to shoot this movie. And there was a legend at the very bottom of each page that showed what all the different letters meant in all the captions. CM stood for camera mount. So is it a tripod shot? Is it a glide track shot? Is it on the floor? What's the camera action? Is it still? Is it panning? Is it following? Is it zooming? We had characters left to right, and if there was an asterisk there, it was in order of appearance. We had indication for if we needed a body double to line up our eyes, or if there was a body interaction that required a lot of choreography. We also had indicators there if we needed to use the softbox lights, and also if we needed to utilize what was called a flicker effect. We had to simulate the light of a fire at one point, but we weren't actually going to light a fire in the woods. So Smokey the Bear would have been on us for that one. We didn't want to have to deal with Smokey the Bear. I had to think about this for a long time, but I watched one of my favorite movies again, 12 Angry Men. And there's a scene where Henry Fonda is up with juror number 1, like Mark and Balsam, I think. They're looking out of a window and they're talking about baseball. It was raining. They simulated rain. Well, you can see the effect of the droplets of water on the window that they're looking out of on their faces. And it almost looks like a flicker effect. And so I looked at that and I thought, wow, maybe if I replicate that and put a big softbox light behind it, it might look like a flicker effect. And it would be an actual special effect. It wouldn't be digital. It would be there in person. And I thought, that's amazing. We should try it. Unfortunately, we never got around to it. I had made this custom newspaper prop for the movie, too. There's a newspaper at one point. And it took me 2 days to edit. I used to be the layout editor of the Penman Press, a student newspaper here at Southern New Hampshire University. I borrowed the header template from the paper and turned it into my own. It was called the Phoenix Follower. My brother suggested you should call it the Phoenix Follower with 2 PHs, so follower with a PH. We tried it, it looks terrible. It was printed by the Newspaper Club in Glasgow, Scotland. Content was great. First page, awesome. It shows like the articles that are relevant, what's going on with the main antagonist, all the different mountains and all the different wildfires that are happening. The second page was a giant wanted poster, and it looks so extravagant. At the bottom is the editorial board, and a lot of the names are made up for the editorial staff, but I'd secretly, at Easter egg, I put my name as the principal layout editor because, you know, I was the principal layout editor, but whatever. I had 2 more pages, but I didn't really know what else to put, and they weren't really going to be shown. So I thought, I'm just going to make a behind-the-scenes look at it. So, like, D is in dirty, not so much dark. It was literally a making of the making of the movie as I was making it. And the 4th page was a transcript of the original comic script that inspired the ideas that were floating around in this thesis. I put a little ad at the bottom. You feeling vegetarian? Try beef seeds, now with 100% real meat. I did character profiles, too, because there were 21 different characters and I was playing all of them. I remember I took 2 light stands and set them up in the family room. My brother helped me rubber band a black blanket to the tops of them. So it would be like this. I had this light on, too. Not with the umbrella, it was actually a direct light, but pretty much the same setup. I had to reshoot 2 of the characters, I remember that. I could look at those characters and see, like, okay, so this character poses like this, or he moves like that. Facial expressions are like that. That was important. Facial expressions were really important, especially because I had 5 characters who pretty much wore all the same stuff because they were uniforms and they worked in the same office. To really distinguish them, I would have to be making different poses and different facial expressions. Also, voice acting was a distinguishing factor. So I'd make each character sound different, too. Pizza and water, we got that from the best pizza place in the world. Just down the street, Town Pizza. And thankfully, the honors program was kind enough to reimburse me for the prices of the food and water. So that was very nice. Thank you, Professor Martino, for that. Rigging was very amateurish, but it was something that had to be taken into account because I knew that I wanted to move the glide track for this movie. I wanted to move the glide track. I wanted to move the camera in some way. We were going to try a zoom shot. We were going to attempt a pan shot too. If we're doing a cloning technique, a pan shot, if you understand, would be way harder than a zoom shot because it's already hard enough for humans to perceive depth. But it's very easy to see lateral motion. So when you have a pan, everything has to be spot on. But when you're doing a zoom, you have a little wiggle room. And I actually did confirm that later on in the shoot. I had to find a way to make the glide track eye level for characters who were either crouching, sitting, or standing. I measured the length, width, height of the glide track, and I measured where my eyes were crouching, sitting, and standing. And we came up with these weird rigs using boxes and barrels and cushions that actually raised the glide track up high enough for the lens to be eye level with all of those different sitting positions and standing positions and crouching positions. I had 3 people ready to shoot this with me. Emily Bishop, who was in an earlier film that I did, Rendezvous. She's my bestie. I've known her since I was 5. We had Ben King, who was in Rendezvous as well. He was also in Verity Cutting Tools. And lastly, we had Dan Griffin. He was one of Ben's friends from another school. So those are the 3 people that I was working with. Sent them the itinerary. We were going to shoot from January 2nd to the 13th. So it's going to be the 2nd and 3rd, and then a break day on the 4th. 5th, 6th, 7th is a break day. 8, 9, 10th is a break day. 11 to 12, and then 13th is a break day. And all these break days also acted as backup shooting days in case things went wrong. The location was the Rentham State Forest. which is fortunate we had 2-minute drive. Actually, like a 30-second. This is like a 30-second drive from my house. About an 8-minute walk. Depends on how fast you walk and how fast you drive, but it's pretty much right there. We planned to meet up at my house at 4 o'clock on each of these days. And then at 4:30, we would head out. By 5 o'clock, we should be ready to shoot. And because this was winter, the sun goes down wicked early. Even at 5, you can still see like a little dark blue in the sky, but the camera could not pick up anything. We would shoot from 5 to 9, 9 at the latest. We wouldn't go beyond 9 because we all have lives and it gets cold out there. And then we'd come back and be done by 9:30. And the pizza's at home too, so that was really nice. So now we're ready to shoot. The winter of 2015 to 2016 was particularly warm, and it was also particularly late. It was warm even during Christmas. First day of shooting was actually supposed to be January 2nd, but I had to cancel it due to pending work. I was still working on the photo storyboard, and I was still working on it on January 3rd. So we canceled that shoot too. January 4th, to much of our dismay, was the day that winter finally hit. And it hit hard. It snowed maybe 3 to 4 inches that day. But the primary concern was that it felt like 7 degrees. And it was windy. And there was snow on the ground and ice everywhere. It was slippery. And I actually surveyed the area we were going to shoot in the woods after the snowfall. And I was right, it was really slippery. So I let everybody know, but they were still game to do it. Dan wasn't available, so we had Ben and Emily. I put in the order for the pizzas and the waters, and they got there. When Ben showed up, we spent the first half hour changing the batteries in the lanterns. And Emily, I remember, she was super late, and when I messaged her, she was like, "Oh my gosh, sorry!" She was endlessly crocheting as she put it. We all went out there, and it was definitely cold. It was so cold, we could only shoot one scene at a time. We were talking really simple scenes, too. Not a whole lot going on. We did scenes 17 and then 12. It was actually so cold that we had to stop for a little bit after scene 17 and go back to the house and warm up, have some pizza, take a break, and get the feeling back into our toes. I still had the feeling in my toes. But Ben and Emily's toes weren't doing so well. Ben and Emily asked if they could have more socks, so I went upstairs and I got this big pile of socks for them to wear. Ben put on 3 pairs of socks, and Emily put on 4. I don't even know how they managed to get these socks on, but they did. I still had 1 pair of socks. And even after all that, after scene 12 when we finally got back, Ben and Emily still couldn't feel their toes for like 15 minutes. And I was bending my toes like, yo, this is easy. I felt pretty bad. It was getting so cold by the end of scene 12 that the cable for the boom mic was starting to get frozen into shape. It was becoming rigid, becoming one piece that you couldn't bend. We had to reshoot scene 12, I found out. We only had 3 people there. It was me, Ben, and Emily. So Ben was my body double for scene 12. And Emily was on camera and sound. The headphones that she wore, the cable, although it's very long, wasn't long enough for her to be able to get to where she needed to be to position the boom mic. And as a result, she accidentally moved the camera at the very beginning of the scene, and you miss, like, all of the action. It's, like, all the way over here. So we couldn't use that, and we had to shoot it again the next time. It's the final countdown! We took a 3-day break after that, and finally got back together again on January 8th. Conditions were much better. They were in the 20s and 30s. It wasn't windy. It was much nicer, and we were able to stay out there for much longer this time. It was me, Emily, and Ben again, and we shot scenes 12 again, 18 and 19. We actually stayed out there consecutively. From what I remember, we stayed out for the whole 3 scenes and didn't have to go back once, and that was very nice. Ben had the hardest time following this one rock with the camera in scene 18. And we had to try it several times, rolling this rock down the hill and him trying to catch it with the camera. And I had to keep getting up to get the rock and put it back and then roll it down again. It was for some super symbolic scene. My knee started to hurt after a while because I kept getting up and sitting back down, getting up, sitting back down. Done. January 9th, that was the night after, was the third shoot, and we couldn't get Emily that time, but Dan was available. Me, Ben, and Dan, and we shot scene 2. At this time, I started realizing that the great, ambitious film that I wanted to make, which was The Shadow in the Dark, in its entirety, all 22 scenes, was starting to become unfeasible. It was a lot of work. We were getting snowed out. We were getting frozen. It was just becoming a really big ordeal. So I knew that I had to salvage as much as I could. And I thought, okay, we're going to shoot scene 2 today because there's a lot of, cool things in scene 2 that I want to get done. We were only able to shoot half of the scene. We shot the better half. I was portraying 3 characters who were wearing Hawaiian shirts. So that was originally the only thing that they were wearing. But it was 30 to 40 degrees outside. We all decided that, hey, I probably shouldn't be changing like that, because I'm going to freeze. I did wear Under Armour for that night. Safety first. Safety first. Always safety first. Water. Oh yeah. And we were only able to shoot half of the scene because it started getting too cold, especially for me because I was changing out of shirts constantly. The last shoot was then planned for January 12th, but that got canceled due to snow and rain. It had snowed and rained, and it was like freezing rain too. So our last shoot was actually January 13th. We couldn't get Emily. She had to babysit. So we had Ben and Dan again. All the other nights were shot in the Rentham State Forest. But this night would be a little different. I have now totally accepted the fact that this film isn't happening to the degree that I wanted, and we need to salvage as many techniques. We need to accomplish as many technical feats as possible. At least that we wanted to try out. I was ready to crack out the generator finally, and the lights that we were going to use. We had a few scenes planned. We were going to shoot scenes 14 and 13, but we were also going to shoot some scenes that had a giant. There was a giant at one point. We were going to do really cool perspective shots, but here's what happened. We actually went past the turn by accident. We ended up on the highway, and we ended up coming there the other way. But when we finally got to the forest trail, Dan said he wouldn't be able to get his car out of the snow after leaving it there for a few hours. He said he couldn't park there, which meant that we couldn't do our thing there. So we just came back to the house. This was becoming a problem. Okay, so the trail is 8 minutes. It's like an 8-minute walk from my house. The place that we were going to shoot in the woods is another 4 minutes away, so that's like 12 minutes. So we would have had to walk 12 minutes to get to where we needed to be. And then we'd need to walk another 12 minutes to get back when we're done. That's 24 minutes of not shooting anything. That's just moving around. And we were going to get tired. We were going to get cold because it was back into the 10s and 20s that night. And it was very windy. I think the high for the wind that day was 18 miles per hour. So it was crazy. We wanted to use the generator. And we would have had to carry the generator. We had wheels, but move the generator for a 12-minute walk there and a 12-minute walk back on the highway, and it was just not feasible. By the time that we would get there, we'd be popsicle sticks, and we couldn't function that way. It wasn't safe. So they actually recommended if we could use my backyard, and I said, well, at this point, I kind of want to not go all the way to the Rentham State Forest. So yeah, let's look at my backyard. We did, and the conditions were not optimal. There was a floodlight that I didn't know how to turn off, and it was lighting up most of the backyard. And over there is the highway. So you can see the lights of the cars going by. You can hear them, too. It was just a crowded area and not very good. So I knew we were going to have problems, but there was nothing else that we could do. We started with scene 14, and then we shot scene 13. We had to take a break in the middle because it was getting cold. And we finally wrapped up that night and hit the hay. And hope we didn't hit the needle. That's right. Certain damages that happened throughout the shoot were that the battery pack rental that we rented stopped working on the 4th night. I don't know what happened, but what I think happened was that all the code finally got to the battery and stopped it or something. It stopped working. That was another reason why we stopped early, was because it stopped working and we had no battery power. The other thing was we lost the cooler. I think somebody took it when we left it out there, because we would leave all the glide track rigging and scaffolding. We'd leave that all out there, because that was a whole carload of stuff. So that saved us a bunch of trips. But I think somebody took it, and it makes sense. It's like you have a bunch of barrels and like buckets out there. We took the cushions back into some boxes, and it's like nobody's gonna take that stuff, but somebody might take a cooler, clean it up, and use it for later. So I ordered another one, same model, and it's back at home. So yay, that's automated. I have the cooler again, so that's awesome. So now I'm in the editing room. I have 7 scenes to work with, and I'm not sure what scenes are good and what scenes are bad, and if all of them are good or if all of them are bad. So this is our time to find out. Scene 12 was the first one that I edited, and this one was really fascinating for me because I had one me handing an iPod over to another me. It's tricky to make that kind of an exchange, but I was inspired by the American flag photo that I took a few years ago, because that was the same concept. I held the flag on one end, and then my brother Lee, he held it on the other end, and then we swapped places. And that was essentially what we were doing here, except now it's a video. My thesis mentor also recommended that I find a common spot or an area where I can make the exchange happen. That way we know where to exchange it. I had Ben as my body double, and Emily was on camera. We picked this spot of tree lichen on the tree, and we were like, okay, that's going to be the exchange spot, and we have to hold the iPod level. Center of the iPod has to be in line with the center of the lichen. To make it easier for ourselves, we actually had the stopwatch app running on the iPod, so we could time different cues throughout the process. 0 seconds, start. At 5 seconds, enter the shot. At 12 seconds, start laughing. At 16 seconds, position the iPod at the spot of tree lichen. At 17 seconds, which is just 1 second later, make the exchange. So grab the iPod, take it out of the other person's hand. And at 21 seconds, laugh again. And then just let the scene play. We tried shooting this 6 times. 3 times the first night, and then 3 times the second night. It took me 2 hours to work on this shot. What I had to do was digitally edit each frame to change the velocity and brightness of the screen on the iPod, because the iPod was actually exchanged slightly differently both times. In one shot, the iPod was taken too fast, and in the other, there was a small twist to it. So those 2 factors made the exchange a little difficult, making the iPod from this video turn into the iPod from this video. So what I did was I went in and I digitally edited each frame. So I took the light of the screen, and instead of making it like twist and go way too fast, I bring it over, try to widen it, brighten it up a bit, and just fix it. So make it look like it was going just at the right speed and not twisting. And it just gradually twisted and didn't twist very fast. Because eventually the screen would go to face the Logan who was receiving it. It was a bunch of micro edits, and it took me 2 hours. But the end result, magic. Truly magic. It was amazing. What I had accomplished. I'm crying. Alright. What I had accomplished was no small feat. It was not another step. It was another mile to actualizing my imagination and creating this fantasy, making it a reality. It was happening. I had 2 Logans making a very successful interaction. And another magical thing about it is the more you watch it again, you actually miss the whole amazing feat that was the exchange. It just becomes an exchange at that point. It just becomes a natural thing. It seems, oh yeah, he handed it over to him. And you almost forget all the time and effort that went into that. But that's the whole point. That's hiding the magic and suddenly making it realer than life. That right there is a real accomplishment. I love every second that I miss just how amazing that shot is, and then realize afterwards, wait, that is a hidden wonder right there. I look at that shot as a moment of triumph, of knowledge, of happiness for sure, and for inspiration for future techniques and and things that we can try with them. Some things that went wrong with the shot though were we lost the audio. I'm not exactly sure what happened, which is fine because originally I did want to like write a 12-bar blues song and have that playing over it, but we never got to that part obviously, so whatever. A bit of a fourth wall breaking moment is you can actually see the light of the iPod spelling out the stopwatch just a little bit. So what they're looking at, you know, it's not something funny, it's just a number counting. Unless they think a number counting up is funny, you know, then whatever. They got a weird sense of humor. Other little things, Ben's face creeps from out of the wire mask at the beginning, but I was like, leave it in. I don't really care about that. But another thing that was tricky was that the light, from the beginning of the video to the end of the video, it had changed. And it was actually hard for me to mask that change smoothly, because at one point, the Logan who's sitting down in the chair overlaps the tree. So at that point, I had to move the layer mask for that. Scene 2 was the scene with all the Hawaiian shirts. There were 3 of me. We were basically like the 3 musketeers.
Are you sure that's a guy?
I'm sure that's a guy.
Are you sure that's a guy?
Well, of course it is.
That was a really cool one because I was successfully able to rotoscope the layer masks for them. We had this sequence where they all enter the shot, and in that shot, they pretty much go into each other's image areas, which means that the layer mask has to be constantly changing. So I would move it like 2 frames, and then split the video, and then make a new layer mask for the next 2 frames. Split the video, make a new layer mask for the next 2 frames. Now I'd keep going. I'd keep mudging the layer masks to keep up with the Logans who are going into each other's image areas. We had a prop gun, not a real gun, that would occasionally overlap the Logan in the background. So what I did was I made the custom layer mask for that. And it was actually able to stay there for like 2 frames each time too. And I would keep changing that to go around that, to go around the gun. You could see that, but it didn't get rid of the image area, or too much of the image area of the guy in the back. And so the end result was a really seamless final shot of 3 of them going into each other's image areas and overlapping at some points, and it was really cool. I was able to move the Logans again due to the advantage of darkness. The Logan on the right swings a lantern at the guy in the middle at one point, and so I knew I had to line it up.
Why'd you just fire?
For that one though, unlike scene 12, we didn't take time to prep up where the strike should happen. So I did have to digitally edit them, digitally move them so that his lantern would be striking him in the face. The light on the middle Logan's face when the lantern hits him is actually pretty convincing. I think with a little more time and energy and maybe making it brighter for those few frames, or maybe it's adding some shadows, that could be made even more realistic. And also I was able to add a Foley sound. It's like a ding, it's like a boom, you know, he gets hit, oh, that hurt. I was able to also successfully mask him falling through and behind the light of left Logan when he does. And that was fun, because I knew what I was doing at that point, and it was just nice to be able to edit each frame and do that. This process of rotoscoping, people say that it's time consuming, and I agree, it is totally time consuming. But it's so much fun too. The end result is great. You're making magic happen frame by frame. It's like you're drawing each frame of it, and you're creating a fantasy, and it's so cool. So I never seem to mind it. I don't mind animating frame for frame and changing things frame for frame to make certain things happen if I know that I'm trying to make something really cool. The more hard work you put into it, the better it will come out. There were some noticeable problems in this shot that I thought were really interesting. First of all, it's only halfway shot. This shot in particular looks like it was done on a tripod. But in fact, it was done on a glide track, and that glide track was not still. It was moving. It was moving a few inches per second. We didn't have much space to work with. We had about a yard to work with. We couldn't move it very much. But that's what I had in mind, was I wanted it to be a moving glide track shot. So we tried it. Fortunately, this was a depth thing, because it was a zoom. We were zooming out. It's hard to perceive depth, especially at night like that. The effect was just so minimal that you really can't notice it at all. To have gotten the shot that I wanted would require a super long glide track, something that isn't even out on the market right now. That would be just cause for what's a custom rig. I had a shot of all 3 Logans asymmetrically spaced across the screen and also symmetrically spaced across the screen. I wanted to have them symmetrically spaced across the screen. I was working with them asymmetrically based on where he strikes the lantern. They all fit in that. I didn't have to edit transform them. All I had to do was move them around in the darkness. If I wanted to edit transform them, I had to either rasterize them from being smart objects or convert them to smart objects. It was one of them. I didn't want to do that at first. I had them asymmetrically spaced across the screen. And then later I tried it. I edited transformed them, and I moved them across the screen. And that was cool too. But when I did that, it flattened the audio tracks. So I couldn't modify the audio tracks, and I actually had to get back to the audio tracks and change them. I could have tried to match the audio again, but that was not something that I was really willing to do at the time. If this was going to become a final finished film, I would have taken the time necessary to make the symmetrical shot happen the way I wanted it to. I actually didn't have enough footage of Middle Logan standing there with his lantern looking dumb. He actually gets struck a little early.
I know, track team, I get it.
That was actually a cue mistake, a choreography mistake. If the movie was done the way I wanted it to be, we would have had stock footage of what they were looking at. They were looking at a bunch of lanterns, trying to figure out whose lantern is who. That stock footage would have been there, and then when we came back to it, I would have done a simple trick where I would have replayed Middle Logan's clip so it looks like he's just standing there again. And just time it to when he gets hit. Another thing that I would have liked to have done is just get better at like that phantom acting and reacting to things. I felt like I could have reacted to getting hit by the lantern better. The audio in the last spoken line by Right Logan is a little hard to hear, so that's just an audio thing that we'd have to take into consideration. We broke a lantern in that scene. Left Logan, when he runs out of the shot, there was this like fault line. And it was like 1.5 to 2 feet deep, just going all across there. And every time I ran a guy over there, I almost tripped in it. And the left guy actually did fall in it, and a lantern broke on the ground. And I was like, that's one lantern broken. We did fix it. Scene 17 in particular was done pretty badly. What I like about it is that I realized what went wrong, and I know ways that I could implement to actually make the shot happen next time if we were to reshoot it.
Don't turn, just listen.
We did this really clever trick where the light of one Logan's lantern has to light up the other Logan. So for that we had a body double. I would come up to Ben, who's on the left, and I'd give my speech. And then when I finished and I left, we looked back at the playback and we timed the speech. We figured out how long it was. Then we had me standing on the left, and Ben would come up on the right with the lantern. It's supposed to be timed to that, and then would leave. So it simulates the effect of my lantern lighting up another me. It was really cool, but we actually got the timing off a little bit. We were able to line up the beginning perfectly. The light of the lantern comes up just fine, and it's seamless, and it looks believable. Ben actually turned away too early. The light of his lantern goes away before I go away, which is unrealistic. And then the other problem was I turned one way, but Ben turned the other way, which meant that the light also turned the wrong way. And that was not a fixable problem. That would require a reshoot. But I could show this to Ben, then we'd be like, aha, that's what went wrong. And then we would go back and make sure we got those right. So we would just have to make sure we got it right. And I like that scene because it's a simple to understand mistake and a simple answer for that mistake. Also, the breath in that shot, you can see my breath, and it disappears under the wire mask of the other Logan, but it actually looks pretty seamless because it just looks like the light is fading away into the darkness. You really can't notice anything. Another scene that didn't really work out so well was scene 13. It was a fight scene. And we wanted to do all these things like, one Logan's hitting another one, he's kicking him, they got a stranglehold going on, some really cool stuff. And that would have been so awesome. But we didn't have enough time, especially given the fact that the battery pack was dying that night. Instead of doing all that, we settled for just a simple, he throws a lantern over at him. And that was a difficult shot too, because we had to combine that lantern with the shot that I'm throwing it to it actually hitting me over there. It was almost as if it was another exchange shot. And the way that we did it, I actually didn't have to edit it so that the lantern hit the other Logan in the face. From what it looks like it hits him in the shoulder, which is actually fine. It sounds like it hurts. Yeah. Problems with this shot, though. Obviously, it was only partially done, but it was also shot in my backyard, and the lighting, the direction that we were shooting it, was terrible. It was lit by the floodlight, and I think you may have even seen some of the lights of the cars. You could definitely hear the cars in that last bit of audio, too, so we must have unplugged the boom mic, either on purpose or by accident. So I had to digitally bring down the light in that shot to a grotesquely small level, low level. It looked really ugly, very grainy. You could hardly see anything anymore. But I did that so that I could move the Logans around and not have the bad background. Because the backgrounds would have to move with the Logans, and we couldn't show that. We broke 2 lanterns in that shot. Why? Because we're throwing lanterns at this point. One of them was the lantern I had used in Verity Cutting Tools, Erebus. That one, however, unlike the other lanterns, started working again miraculously. We didn't need to fix it. So yeah! Scene 14 was the shot that I learned the least amount from, because it was also the easiest shot.
If I showed you the light, would you not walk toward it?
It was a simple mask through the middle of one Logan holding another Logan in a stranglehold around a tree. You can't even see the tree, really. Given the void that's there, it's easy to assume that there's a tree or some other object there. This gun in particular was pretty funny. There was no trigger, and there wasn't even a hole in the front. So it was literally just a block of aluminum shaped like a gun. And it got really oily after a while because our hands were touching it, and the oils on our hands got stuck on it, and it was just kind of ugly. It looked intimidating in that way, so that's all that matters. It was just so simply done. I knew what I needed to do, and I did it, and it worked. While it's a really cool shot, I really don't care for it too much because I didn't learn anything from it. I didn't have a wow moment. I just had a, yep, that's right moment. That shot in particular, though, was supposed to be one of the most signature shots in the movie, was me putting another me in a stranglehold. It said a lot about the movie, so I'm glad that we were able to get that shot in there. Only problems with the scene were that it was only partially shot, so that's all that we had of the scene. Clothing, which is a big distinguishing factor of who each character is, couldn't be seen. Ben and I, we switched jackets for that scene, but you can't even see the jackets in the lighting. You can see everything else. You can see the face of the unconscious Logan. You can see the glimmer of the gun. You can even see these cool little shadows covering the antagonist's face. But you can't see any of the sleeves, which is unfortunate because that distinguishes who is who. So at that point, you just kind of have to guess.
Isn't this romantic? Okay, that's what actually happened.
Well, I was like, that's why I didn't say anything. I was like, he might.
Scene 17, we just rolled a bunch of rocks down a hill, and that was pretty cool. And in scene 18 was a shot of a guy making a phone call. There was no cloning in either of these. These were just things that drove the narrative a little further. And then that was it. I put all 7 scenes together into a final cut, and it was about 4 minutes 26 seconds. And that was all the footage that we got of what we wanted to be originally wanted to be a 30 to 90 minute feature film. And we got out of there with 4 minutes and 26 seconds. And although we didn't get everything that we wanted, or even close to what we wanted, we got out of there with some cool new tricks and things that we learned, especially the exchange shot. We showed that we could improve, get better, and learn newer and more complicated techniques, apply them, and get them done, or at least learn better about what goes into making shots like those. This movie was a total sandbox for the technique, and I'm so glad that we did it, because without that, we wouldn't be able to realize some of the obstacles that are really going to challenge us when we do something bigger like the open sky. And I can show these clips to other people and help them to get the idea. We can all start thinking about that. And I think that that's really cool. I think that this is something that I can really show to others, work with others, ultimately be proud of. And I am proud of it.